It is September 22nd, 2024, and Hezbollah is now responding to Israel after enduring a week of Israeli terror attacks, bombings, you name it. We're watching tensions continue to escalate at levels that we have not seen in years. And yet, as all of this is happening, you have reports coming out saying that this week's unprecedented attacks against the Lebanese people that were carried out by Israel, that they were apparently up to 15 years in the making. So we're going to get into all of the latest and what's at stake moving forward here in this video. But before we do, I just want to give a quick plug to a new project that I'm working on for my paid subscribers over on Patreon and also on Substack. It's a new series called Sanctioned, where every week I dive into a different topic, more of a deep dive than I do typically here on my main feed. Maybe it's a date in history that we're looking back at, or a specific event that I wanted to explore more into, and I'm going to be doing that in this episode series. But episode 1 of Sanctioned is out right now if you want to go check it out at patreon.com/Rachel Blevins. After this video, again, I'll get into more of it at the end of this video and kind of explain some of those details if you want to wait until then. But for now, let's get into today's topic. As you've likely heard from the breaking news reports that came out day after day this last week, it started on Tuesday with a series of explosions of pagers that almost sounded like gunshots ringing out. But by Wednesday, it wasn't just the pagers, but it was also handheld radios and other devices that were reported to have exploded. And the death toll from this attack, I mean, we're talking about nearly 40 people killed and over 3,000 people injured. You had these explosions reported all across Lebanon and into Syria. And the first question wasn't who could have done this. The first question was, how did Israel do this? And in the days since, the picture of how this terror attack came to be has become increasingly clear, largely thanks to the anonymous intelligence officials from the United States all the way to Israel who have been talking quite a bit. The New York Times described it in a report titled "How Israel Built a Modern-Day Trojan Horse," in which they said that by all appearances, BAC Consulting was a Hungary-based company that was under contract to produce the devices on behalf of a Taiwanese company, Gold Apollo. In fact, it was part of an Israeli front, according to 3 intelligence officers briefed on the operation. They said that at least 2 other shell companies were created as well to mask the real identities of the people creating the pagers, Israeli intelligence officers. But those pagers were never actually in Hungary, as a Hungarian government official apparently told ABC News. Oh, and when it comes to how long this attack was planned, the outlet also reported that according to U.S. intelligence officials, this terror attack was at least 15 years in the making. They also claim that the CIA knew about it and really was hesitant to carry out an attack like this of their own. Why? Because they were too worried about collateral damage. You know, the phrase that the US government uses when innocent civilians are killed when they're carrying out an illegal airstrike in a foreign nation that Congress never authorized the US to be at war with in the first place, and then innocent people die as a result of this bombing they just carried out targeting whatever alleged terrorists they claim that they needed to take out. Yeah, that. And it should come as no surprise to anyone paying attention to Israel's genocidal war against the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip over the last nearly 1 year now that they don't exactly seem to care about civilian casualties. In fact, as 972 magazine revealed in an investigative report published back in November, Israel knows exactly how many civilians they are going to kill before every attack they carry out, and they are more than willing to murder hundreds of civilians if they think they can claim that they killed a single Hamas commander in the Gaza Strip. We saw that bloodlust on full display in Lebanon this week as the pagers, which were reportedly shipped to Hezbollah within the last 6 months, accompanied by just a few ounces of an explosive compound that was put in by the Israeli intelligence officers as part of this operation, as those pagers began to explode in schools, in hospitals, in homes. The first day of attacks began at around 3:30 p.m. in the afternoon, literally during rush hour, when kids were getting out of school. That included 9-year-old Fatima Abdullah, who had just completed her first day of 4th grade. She heard her dad's pager beeping on the kitchen table. She ran to grab it for him like she would on any other day. And then it exploded, and her life met a sudden tragic end. Her aunt actually told the New York Times that she, quote, was trying to take courses in English. She said that the little girl loved English. And yet it was the Americans who refused to keep her safe, who enabled the Israelis to murder her at just the age of 9 years old. And if that wasn't bad enough, when the second day of explosions came, they targeted a funeral service that was being held for the victims of the day before. And I've heard a number of different reactions and opinions in the aftermath of these attacks. And I think that to refuse to call them a terror attack, to claim that, oh, Israel was only targeting members of Hezbollah, right? If the pagers were in the hands of these Hezbollah members, then who cares who they killed, who they were around? That was the real target. To claim all of that is to ignore the basic facts, to ignore the fact that these attacks were targeting the civilian population. Israel knew exactly who was around. They knew the exact time of day that they were carrying out this attack, and that's why they did it, to create maximum damage, maximum terror, and maximum casualties as a result. But does the U.S. call it what it is? Do they condemn their close ally? Do they admit that they had prior knowledge and could have put a stop to it? Well, the short answer there is no. Or we could just listen to what State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller had to say about it on Tuesday.
We are gathering information on this incident. I can tell you that the U.S. was not involved in it. The U.S. was not aware of this incident in advance, and at this point, we're gathering information.
So if the U.S. wasn't aware, as Miller claimed that they weren't, then why not condemn it? Right? Why not condemn your close ally for the mass killing of civilians in Lebanon? Well, not only has the Biden administration refused to do that, but in the days since, officials like Matthew Miller have continued to try to shift the narrative. Right after 2 days of devices exploding in Lebanon, after civilians killed, that was followed by 2 more days of bombings that were carried out by Israel that also killed civilians in Lebanon. As all of that is happening, Matthew Miller responds to it by insisting that we need to look at the bigger picture here, right? We need to look at these ongoing border clashes between Israel and Hezbollah, the fact that Hezbollah is not innocent in this. And he's claiming that that is what we should be focusing on, not focusing on the role that the U.S. played or could have played in refusing to call out Israel on these attacks, because that is exactly what it is continuing to do. And as a reminder, when it comes to those border clashes, although I don't expect a member of the Biden administration to admit it, and they certainly have not yet, Hezbollah has made it very clear how to get those border clashes to stop. Right? It has said if Israel agrees to a ceasefire in Gaza, if they agree to pull out their forces from the Gaza Strip, to end their occupation of the Palestinian people, to end their bombardment and blockade, then the border clashes in the north with Hezbollah will come to a magical end. And yet Israel doesn't seem to see the writing on the wall. They don't seem to see that it is a very clear picture that Hezbollah is going to continue to keep them busy in the north, that they are not going to let Israel have a single day of rest for as long as Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. But as we've seen, Israel has not chosen peace in any way, in any region, anywhere. And so the question becomes, what does that mean for Hezbollah? What does that mean for the group who just had a military commander killed by Israel, and yet another airstrike this week that targeted Beirut, Lebanon's capital, and also left dozens of civilians dead in the process? Well, Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah gave a speech on Thursday in which he said that the terror attacks from Israel crossed all rules, laws, and red lines. He went on to say, quote, "This is a massacre, a major aggression against Lebanon, its people, its resistance, its sovereignty, and its security. It can be called war crimes or a declaration of war, whatever you choose to name it. It is deserving and fits the description. This was the enemy's intention." The tensions between Israel and Hezbollah remain incredibly high, and as of Sunday morning, Hezbollah launched more than 100 rockets across northern Israel, with some landing near the city of Haifa, as Israel launched hundreds of strikes on Lebanon in return. As for the international reaction, UN Human Rights Commissioner Volker Turk released a statement condemning this week's attacks, in which he said, quote, "Simultaneous targeting of thousands of individuals, whether civilians or members of armed groups, without knowledge as to who was in possession of the targeted devices, their location, and their surroundings at the time of the attack, violates international human rights law and, to the extent applicable, international humanitarian law." Now, both Russia and China have condemned the attacks, with Beijing's UN representative calling it a grave violation of international humanitarian law, and Moscow's foreign ministry spokeswoman calling it an act of monstrous terrorism. Meanwhile, you've got the US and its Western allies calling on everyone to just de-escalate tensions, right? Don't escalate them any further, as if it wasn't Washington's very close ally who was the one to escalate these tensions in the first place. And I know that I am likely to get comments that say some version of, but October 7th, right? But Hezbollah has taken part in these border clashes against Israel. And to that, I would say we have to remember that the ongoing tensions right now did not start on October 7th of last year. I would also remind you that it was 1 year ago today when Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stood before the United Nations General Assembly and he held up a map that was titled "The New Middle East." Not only did it brag about normalization with some of the countries that Israel has really been targeting in recent years, but it also wiped Palestine off the map completely. That speech and the context surrounding it is the topic of the first episode of my new series called Sanction, which is available to my paid subscribers now because, thanks to the West, we live in a world where sanctions run rampant. So my goal with these series is to have each episode focus in on a main topic, whether that's a moment in history or even a more recent news story that needs to be explored further in depth. I'm hoping to do just that with this new series, which is available to my paid subscribers. So if you're signed up on Patreon, that's at patreon.com/Rachel Blevins. For just $5 a month, you get access to that exclusive content, or for $10 a month and up, you can also contribute to the content that I create in the future. So I'll have polls asking about what topics I should cover. I also have posts asking about what guest I should interview. So for $10 and up, you can contribute to the content that I make in the future, or for that $5, you just get access to that content. Now, I know that some of you are signed up as paid subscribers on my Substack page. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. You'll also get access to that exclusive content there. So it's really just whatever platform you prefer. And just a note to say that the overwhelming majority of my content is still free. It's still available to the public. I'm not changing that. I'm just adding something extra for those of you who have signed up as paid subscribers, or who maybe are considering doing so, but you're also looking at it and going, okay, what am I getting out of this on my end? I wanted to create an incentive there. I'm really looking forward to continuing to grow that community because, let's be honest, these are very uncertain times that we live in, to say the least. Speaking of sanctions, we have the US government cracking down on a number of areas in our media and in social media as well. So I'm doing everything that I can to stay afloat here, to still continue to put out quality work to all of you. And that is made possible by your support. So for all of you who are either signing up as paid subscribers, or who are even just sharing my videos, responding to them, leaving those comments, leaving a like, subscribing in general, you make this content possible. So thank you again. Thank you for giving me a chance and checking out my new series. And I'll see you all next time.